we originally recognized at the beginning that we actually, many of you represented kind of an issue area where we represented actually a specific population that's marginalized in communities and missing from all of that. So we first had to kind of coalesce and come together to identify what are some of our common issues, which later need to be incorporated into healthcare, into education, into a lot of the other parts of it rather than stand alone. The LGBT community has never really argued that we want special rights. Our biggest thing has been always wanting to be included in the grander scheme of society and not to be special, but to be equal. We went through this in a few areas. We took a lot of this, where a lot of this really came from is last year there was a document founded called the Dallas Principles. It was a group of Obama supporters, LGBT Obama supporters that met in Dallas, and were really pissed off that LGBT agenda just wasn't moving forward. And it was a document that was written with a lot of anger at the time, but it really encapsulates a lot of the issues that are really serious for LGBT folk. And we tried to narrow it down where they can then be incorporated into a lot of the different sections with how we devised it. The first was dignity and family. LGBTQ-Floridians, right now, they can be fired from their jobs, evicted from their homes, and refused public accommodations and services. We support expanding Florida's Civil Rights Act to include sexual orientation, gender identity/expression as equal protected classes in the workplace, housing, and public accommodations, programs, and services to better achieve equality for all Floridians. We support equal compensation and opportunity for advancement, for equal work, and access to all economic opportunities for all people. On that one, to hit, because I know the question's going to come, there was legislation that was introduced. There was a committee, not hearing workshop, and I'm not sure, Representative Randolph, I think you were the sponsor of the bill. It was the Florida Competitive Workforce Act, which worked to amend the state civil rights bill. So that was one mechanism to change a component of that, but not necessarily equal work. And right now, in 29 states, gay and lesbians can be fired just for their sexuality. I could say, you know what, you're gay, I don't want you in my office, you're fired. And then I think it's 39 states, a transgendered individual, real or perceived on either case, can also be fired. On family, we really wanted to focus the fact that we're family, we're human beings, we're still one human family in all this. All children have the right to a stable and loving home, regardless of the sexual orientation, gender identity expression of a biological foster or adoptive parent. We wanted to focus first on the child, not necessarily the fact that the person who may be doing the adoption is gay or transgender or other. We wanted to make sure that the focus is always the child, and it's not gay adoption, it's actually adoption equality. Where was I? This includes the right of a partner/spouse's ability to second parent a child, which is a new term that ACLU is doing through their adoption training. We impose discriminatory laws such as the DOMA, which is the Defense of Marriage Act, which is on the federal level, and of course the infamous Amendment 2, Florida's Marriage Protection Act. We support full marriage equality, and Florida must recognize marriages recognized in other jurisdictions like New York, everybody, and extend all benefits, rights, and protections to spouses, and the right for a spouse to immigrate into the United States. This includes the right for spouses to also act as a health and legal surrogate for their family. In education, there were some wonderful things between the education portion and also the social justice that came before us. So it was really great to hear that we really do have shared things, and finding ways to include these in each of our areas isn't really going to be a challenge. In education, every student, regardless of their sexual orientation, gender identity expression, or that of their parents or family, have the right to an education that is affirming, inclusive, and free from bullying. Every student should be provided with an age-appropriate, comprehensive sex education that is medically accurate. And Planned Parenthood would tell you, there are young girls out there thinking that they can have a can of Sprite after having sex and they won't get pregnant. So, well, you can actually, listen, it's worked for me. We support educational equity, which includes, but is not limited to the teaching of LGBTQ history, and contributions to society. And right now, in the state of California, a bill was just introduced to ensure that part of their history curriculums is the teaching of LGBT people, the movements and contributions. So that was a major success in California. Under healthcare, we recognize the fact that many of us, as we're aging, some of us may be put into nursing homes or whatever else, and you don't have people who are really qualified to understand the needs as LGBT folks, especially when a partner may visit you. But LGBT people should have access to affordable, high quality, and culturally competent health care without discrimination, including maternity, reproductive health care. Oh, there should be all little things in there. Reproductive health, sorry. And entitled to the benefit of family medical leave. And that's something we thought really important. On crime, we have the protections for hate crime laws at the federal level. But the state, while it's not explicitly stated or enumerated in the hate crime statute and only protects sexual orientation, there's still the need to go further. Every LGBTQ person has the right to life, protected against crimes motivated by bias against one's actual or perceived sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. Thankfully, in this state, during campaign time, Bill McCollum, at least when he was Attorney General, did put out a support that when the federal law was being changed, that he supported inclusion of those in the federal hate crime statute. It's a shame he also didn't call for that extra to go further in the state civil rights, the state statute on hate crimes.
But we can fight for this. So it's a recognizable political position. There's already been an amendment on the Constitution that says one thing, and we want candidates that are going to help us push for the opposite. And now we begin the process, thanks to a lot of what you've done, is you've given us how you explain and how you understand what these positions mean. And comes the work of how you help go into various communities that are interested in these issues and help them to volunteer for a campaign, help them to engage the community.
I want to say this one, one of the discussions, because the target is Tallahassee for all this change, which was we tried to strike up and really recognize that in Florida, we have a better chance of becoming younger than seeing progress with this, what we have up there. So we know that, for our solutions, well, when you age, you do get younger mentally sometimes. Not that kind. And this is, we recognize that at the federal level, at least, a lot of our solutions have been turned to Congress, or even, thankfully, our Constitution allows for challenges in court. And we've seen with the adoption policy with the Supreme Court case in Florida, but we really believe that, for marriage, we're going to see that coming out of the United States Supreme Court and not even out of Congress. So we recognize, and I think one of the important things we have to do is still make certain that when candidates are supported, that those candidates, especially if it's a governor, is going to, and senators who would then ratify a nomination to the Supreme Court, would be certain that that candidate is somebody who supports these values, to make certain that when this comes up to court, there's not already an institutional bias within the person, and that they will look actually at the law and the fairness that applies to all people.
Edwin, I just wanted to add that Michael was saying 2 years ago we had a ban, Amendment 2 banned marriage here in the state of Florida. And so when we're talking about policy, the reality is there could be an adoption ban in 2012. And our community has been attacked. It's been attacked before. It's not just our community, but it's our progressive movement has been attacked. And if that policy is going to come up, what we must demand of our elected officials, but each other, our different caucuses, is that we will come together and to support the movement as a whole by working to protect adoption as well as children as well. So it's something that not only our elected officials can do, but we as a community can do as well.
And we were challenged at, to say, what does this mean in the grand scheme? So we've already had that, everybody's heard the conversation when it came to repeal the adoption ban, of what this means on an impact in the state, what it means on the impact of a child, that they have a loving nurturing home, and so many other things. When it comes to education, and we talk about medically accurate comprehensive sex ed, we see the adverse impact on, I'm a person living with AIDS myself who didn't have the benefit of a culturally competent education, yet that was in New Jersey. It was the water. But here, you know, we need to make certain, though, that we recognize the fact that of HIV infections, a majority of them right now are gay men at the age of 24 in the state of Florida. And even 1 in 4 of them is, or sometimes 2 in 4, are related to crystal meth use as well at the same time. So it's really making certain that there's real conversations of those things that don't happen in the classroom, so that we really are preparing our children for the world, no matter who they are, even if they come out later in life, that they've had that exposure and can provide that same support. And we're already seeing in the state of Florida, it's an issue I'm working on very closely. The AIDS Drug Assistance Program is in a major crisis, and Florida has almost 50% of the total number in the nation of people on a wait list to get AIDS drugs. And you know, you look at something like this, and if we do the prevention the right way and adopt other issues of harm reduction, even like providing needle exchange programs for drug users to reduce HIV and hepatitis infections, you know, there is an economic impact on this state in savings. It's unfortunately, it's just that ideology and culture which we continually have to fight, that sometimes have to nurse a martini to deal with it.
Let me just, to recap. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, it wasn't really clear, I just want to make sure that it's understood. There is no repeal of the equal adoption ban. I just want to make sure that that's clear, because it was not, it was a local ruling that was not challenged, so by the then governor, so it was not brought to the Supreme Court. They have not ruled on that. So it's still on the books.
Yes.
The governor at the time said that we would not be enforcing it. So that's the celebration. It wasn't that it's not on the books anymore.
Correct.
There's also been some strong discussion on the legislative side that the Republican legislature is going to put an amendment on the ballot explicitly banning gay adoption. They're not going to use "we ban gay adoption." What they're going to do is they're going to say "we, disallowing non-married couples from adopting."
So if I understand the positions here, it is expanding the Florida Civil Rights Act to include, so that's question there, like question 1.
And the legislation for this one is the Florida Competitive Workforce Act, which Scott Randolph, I believe, was a sponsor. We didn't touch on marriage. We struggled on marriage because we didn't want to water down marriage equality. We had quite a debate on that one. And we know that domestic partnership was recognized. But as far as LGBT concerned, I think where we felt strong, and the consensus from what I'm going to surmise from, we wanted marriage equality. We didn't want somebody else just to say, well, you know what, I don't have a black marker, but let me give you a red one instead. We didn't want somebody to substitute saying, well, if they're going to settle for this, let's just give them the lesser of 2.
Everybody goes max equal.
Yeah.
We don't want civil unions, we don't want domestic partnerships, we want marriage.
So marriage equality is the next one?
Full equality.
Yeah, you're right.
We support full marriage equality, and I think that's good. Yeah, full that. And then under education, now of these, we've got to get 3, because otherwise we get into a conversation of why they get 4 or 5.
Well, actually, no. And for this one, I'll argue an exception. And the exception is this is actually about, and it's true. And it goes actually with the same with the social justice. These are very similar. Those are overall concepts where I think when you get to targeted areas, such as like jobs and healthcare, these are points that actually, when you look at some of the other points, they should be somehow figured a way to be adopted and incorporated in with the already language that's been proposed by the other caucuses. So what the LGBT community really is one that wants inclusion. We don't want to have our own table. We want to have a seat at the table. And I think that really this is kind of some basic overall arching thing to think of. When we come up and we talk about healthcare or we talk about family, this is probably one of the more primary, driving issues when it comes to LGBT people, family, where there is there are bans against us. There are,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think, so to limit it to 3 is a real challenge on that.
Edwin, I think our healthcare addresses the family medical leave in our healthcare bullet point.
So maybe you already have the,
Yeah, adoption, marriage, and expanding Florida's civil rights act would probably be the top, right?
can we get, is the concept really?
Adoption, marriage, jobs.
But I think some of the other points.
Education is very important.
Yeah, I think need to be rolled into the other processes.
The
Absolutely.
thing that we were looking for is, yes, you may have family medical leave, but we want the LGBT to be into that part of it, because
It
when
is.
my partner was dying,
It
I
is.
couldn't get family medical leave, because even though my company offered domestic partnership insurance,
We
I
discussed that.
couldn't get the leave.
We wanted expanded to
And we're going to
include.
look forward to you presenting on that.
Yes.
But I do want to say though, if we could just scroll up, well, it's all right. But everything that we've talked about here and a lot of things, you know, we've seen a lot of progress where counties, including Orange County, did it recently, school boards and local governments are actually enacting discrimination, anti-discrimination policies that prohibit based on LGBT folks. Now, and the legislators in the room can attest, there either was a bill or there is going to be a bill introduced that will strip local governments and school boards of the authority to establish such laws and such policies. And not only to restrict them, but it will also strip them of any protections they've put into place and make certain that they can't go into the area of human rights. And that is something very dangerous that's on the forefront for us. So we really feel strong that those things really have to be hit hard.
Ray Seaman,
Yes.
we need the playbook.
Oh, you want to talk about that now?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, LGBT, you guys were awesome.